the Spanglish World Network and Single TV channel 250. I want to remind you to please download the application of Single TV on on iOS and Android stores. Remember that the application is completely free, so there is no reason why not to download it, enjoy it. But we do ask you that once you have enjoyed some of the programming and have experienced the application, to let us know by going back to the store how the application has functioned, or if there is something in our programming that you would like to enhance or see more of. We are always glad to bring new programming to you, and that's how we do it, by you commenting and leaving us a rating. As well, Single TV can be found on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Amazon Fire TV Sticks, Roku and Roku Sticks, and on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Next to me on my screen, you can see Mr. Obi Spencer. He is the host of a show called Me, My Scotch, and I on Singles TV channel 250 and on the Spanglish World Network. Obi, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Eduardo. It's good to be here.
So, last night your show was outstanding. Your show is normally at 10 p.m. on Fridays. Can you give just for a little bit of a knockdown to the audience, what is the show about and how they can view you?
Absolutely. So the show basically is an interview show. I introduce my guests. They're kind of aware of the topics ahead of time, and we focus on what they're experts on. Last night we had a gentleman from the television and movie industry who has a YouTube channel. We focused all on sports movies. Next week we're having a former professional football player. So obviously the subject will be football and athletics. And we try to take their expertise and let them share it with everybody. What our guests don't always know is that in the middle of the show, we have a little hook on them where we do a little fashion review. We try to tie it into the subject of that they're covering. Like I said, yesterday we did movies. So we had Gina Davis, an athlete and a movie star, what she's wearing, kind of talk about that. Now we're nobody on the show is a fashion expert, so you're not going to get labels and brands, but just see how you should dress when you're out there in the world. And the last bit that gives the show its name is we do a little whiskey tasting, get some flavors, learn about some whiskeys. When possible, they're tied to the subject, but that's a lot harder to do than the fashion person. And it's just a great opportunity to talk to somebody who's an expert in a particular field, get their take on it, and learn about them and everything we want to know about whatever the sport or subject matter is.
That's awesome. So let's talk sport, because you are a renowned analyst on both on your show and as well on the Sports Den with Scott Churchson. And I want to start the show just with a sad note, because it is very sad. Well-renowned commentator and analyst in ESPN, as well as in TSN here in Canada, former football player in the NFL, and former CFL star Chris Schultz, passing away at the age of 61. He played for Dallas Cowboys, and he played with the local team here in Toronto, the Argonauts. And I had the great honor of actually interviewing him while he was in his playing career, both in the NFL and the CFL, and as well after being a colleague of mine in the press box. So his passing is very sad. We want to send to the Schultz family our most sincere condolences in the name of Spanglish Sports World and Spanglish World Networks. And He's a native of Burlington, Ontario, and he will be definitely missed amongst the media centers across this country. So let's get into the baseball scene, and I want to talk with you because we have talked about fans in the stands for so long. When are they going to be back? Well, Major League Baseball tested it last season, even though they weren't supposed to test it. But this now they just released a list of permit where they have negotiated with different states, and we'll go team by team and trying to think of what's going to happen at the stadiums. So let's start by looking at Atlanta Braves. They have Trust Park will open its gates, uh, and they will have 25% capacity. Now, 25% capacity at Trust Park means around between 15,000 and 25,000 people in a stadium that sits 47 or 48,000 people. Um, to me, I still uh, I still feel cautious about the idea of gates opening while we still are experiencing and no one has been vaccinated completely. What do you think of it?
Uh, it's tough because there's a lot of competing priorities here. I think the number one priority that most people want is their own safety and people to preserve their safety. But we do have a lot of businesses, a lot of that are around these stadiums, in these stadiums that need some people there. Um, I feel like there's those stadiums that are indoors, even though they're huge, if they're an indoor stadium, thinks things need to be a little tighter, almost completely shut down. But in an outdoor stadium, a lot of these places are having rules where you sell a box of a group of tickets, you give 6 feet, you put the next group of tickets, um, you make sure everybody wears a mask, and you kind of hope for the best as more and more people get vaccinated. It's such a I'm more probably along your lines. Like I want to be risk averse here and not open the stadiums, but it's so hard for me to tell people, don't do it. Don't go outside. I know I've done a few things. I went to the down the shore in the summer. Of course, I was masked up. It always spooks me when somebody takes off their mask, even to take a drink or have a bite to eat. And you're not going to open up the stadiums and not sell food and beer. That would be my perfect compromise. I'd go further capacity and less ability to eat and drink and say your mask has to be on for the full X hours. The only thing we're selling is water. Um, but nobody wants to do it that way either, I'm sure. But that's my general take is make it so you have to wear a mask the whole time except for water would be my best bet. And something I've said several times, and it's not getting done, and there's nobody who seems to be leading the charge here, is a lot of these stadiums are opening up to be vaccination sites. I think the real thing is get a ticket, get a vaccine on the same day. And if you're getting one of these 2-shot vaccines, you get a ticket for this game and for 6 weeks down the line. You get both these tickets, you go to your stadium. It's a long line to get in, but you get your vaccine, you get your ticket, you go watch a game, you come back, you watch another game, you get your second shot. If you make it a 3-ticket package, on the third game, we can have the 100% capacity and you can have everything open again. That's going to help everybody out.
Yeah, that's actually a hell of a plan because if you can get vaccinated going into the stadium, it's still not completely safe, but at least you know that people are getting vaccinated while going to the stadium. Um, so let's go down again. We'll go down the list here. Arizona, Arizona, Arizona right now. Uh, has a field capacity of 48,000 people. They are going to allow 25,000 people into Chase Field. Uh, with Arizona, it's a very risky situation because it's one of the high points in this country where the pandemic has really hit them hard. And we know that right now there is preseason training in the Cactus League, and we already have experienced in 3 of those games in the first weekend, last weekend, where there were 15 cases reported after the first game of the season. So, and they don't know how many more because of the people are being notified as we speak, get tested. So that that's where I feel the risk is. I mean, yes, you are allowing people in, but this time it was ground operations of the team that contaminated the fans. It wasn't the other way around. So you want to risk having, let's say, 15,000 people contaminated and having to get tested again uh, because of this. In Baltimore, they haven't made an announcement yet. The local government hasn't opened up yet. In Boston, there is 5,000 people being allowed, 12% of the capacity of Fenway Park. Um, in Chicago, both Wrigley and uh, both Wrigley Field and Guaranteed Field are still having discussions as to how many spectators they will allow. It's expected that at Wrigley, they are talking about 15% capacity, and it's also at Guaranteed Field, uh, they are saying 25%. Uh, Cincinnati is one of those states where Cincinnati Stadium and Cleveland, both those cities have large stadiums, and all the concession stands outside the stadium are going to be operational, and they are allowing 30% capacity. I don't know, and I keep going down the list, but the interesting parts are in California. California has said that depending on the zone that you are in, where you are in the purple or red zones, different things can happen. Uh, Dodger Stadium happens to be on the purple zone. They are allowing only 100 people into the stadium. So what about a stadium with 100 people inside of it? I don't see the need.
100 people in a stadium. You know what the great thing about that is? If you're one of those 100 people and Kershaw pitches a no-hitter, or somebody hits, or Mookie Betts does something, a 5 home run game, and you have one of those 100 tickets, what you can sell that ticket for in the future, it becomes a collector's item. It's almost better than the stadiums that are going to look full. There's 100 people in the stadium. What you're gonna put them on the first base and third base line, 50 people on each side, well spaced out. It's going to look ridiculous on TV. They're not going to make any noise to affect the game. But to have one of those tickets, I think it's actually going to make it, forget all of the health and safety. It's just going to make it so much fun to be like, I got my ticket to that game. Scalpers are going to go crazy on those tickets. That's such a bizarre situation to have 100 people at a baseball game at a stadium that holds 50,000 people. It's going to be crazy, and it's going to be so crazy. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move away from pandemic, and we are going to look now at the following thing. The Washington Nationals agreed to a minor league deal with Justin Miller. Justin Miller is a great prospect uh, uh, that went through Minnesota and the Tigers last in the past, and basically it's interesting. They are giving him a minor league deal, a guy that last season finished with one of the best ERAs in the game, in the 52 game season. But it's interesting. I don't understand why teams are doubtful of the players. It's not the market that used to be in this game.
I think that they get so involved, for better or worse, in the analytics. And they look at that age number and they go, that guy's 33. He's had shoulder problems. If we can get him on a minor league deal because no one else will take him, we're going to. And everybody's in the. It was different when there was only 2 or 3 teams using the data or using the same data. And that's why you get the Moneyball phenomenon, because there's one group of people looking at something different than everybody else. When everybody starts to look at that same thing again, then the market, there's no market advantage, right? Because everybody's looking at the same set. And now age is such a big part of that set of numbers that people are looking at. They go, they used to think 30 to 35 was a prime, and now they're like, no, 25 to 32 is a prime. So this guy's just past his prime. He's had some shoulder injuries. With everybody looking at the same data, it hurts. I mean, there's going to be a team, probably a poor team, not that any of these teams are truly poor, who are going to find a new piece of data to start focusing on. It's going to change things up again. But until then, I think we're going to have these bizarre free agent markets where everybody's looking at the same thing. Just like in football, where everyone's looking at the same chart to when to go for 2. Everybody right now is looking at the same chart for how much to pay a guy. And I think in Miller's case, age is the big factor that's keeping him from getting into getting a pro contract.
So we are going to drift into another area of dispute amongst MLB. Sam Dyson was yesterday suspended for a full year, and he has accepted his responsibility in a domestic violence case. But I am trying to figure out, because I don't know if you remember the case that happened that with the ex-Met player that was also in a dispute with domestic violence, and he was suspended for almost 2.5 seasons for the same reason. All of a sudden now, these penalties are decreasing in time to avoid losing the pitcher or losing the player. Is that correct that you gave someone a bigger sanction uh, 3-4 years ago, and now it's has decreased?
You know, I think that when you start talking about the length of time that somebody is being punished for and what that crime is, the problem is that we as fans don't have access to the minutia of the cases. And these are things that matter. Like, we can all be, he's involved in domestic violence. And if we don't have a simple "you're guilty, you're out" situation, these punishments sort of have to fit the crime, and we don't fully know any of the crimes because we're just not on the jury, if you will. So it's hard to judge punishment to punishment to punishment. You want it to be harsh. Losing a whole season is harsh. That's a year out of your pocketbook. We just talked about the older you get, the harder it is to get a contract. The team gets to look at your, possibly releasing you with no problems. So I'm not sure that this case compared to that case where it should fall on the spectrum of punishment. But that's the thing. I don't know the full details of every case, and we have to hope that our leagues, now that they seem to be taking this serious, that they are developing a process to make sure that the punishment fits the crime. because the minutia of each case does matter, and we're not always exposed to that. The other thing is, I think that the leagues are learning if you make a shorter time frame, you don't have to then fight it out and keep it in the news. Just like a regular lawyer in court says, this punishment could be 10 years, but if you plea bargain, we'll give you 3 years and we'll all be done with this mess. Will you take it? And I think that some of that is also starting to go on. There may be some plea bargaining behind the scenes. You're going to accept the punishment if we only make it a year. I'm a little less okay with that in the sports world. I want these guys to have to fight to really feel uncomfortable about their punishments for these things. Because if they do fight it, then more of the details come out, and the more details that come out, as disgusting as they are, the more we as fans can evaluate what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm just concerned is that they are lowering the length of the punishments, and so you had a player that lost 2.5 years because he was made the one of the first cases of domestic violence in the game. So he was punished harder to make an example for the other guys. And now you have cases now that where the length time is not the same as you gave the other guy. So now you are going to get into a legal battle, and when players will come out and say you said and say you gave me this punishment, and I lost 2.5 years of service as a baseball player, and I accept my guilt of what I did. But why are you giving for the same violation someone a lesser punishment?
Again, I think that's going to come down to what domestic violence is the charge, if you will. But what was that violence? What was the behavior? What was the consistency? We can all hopefully agree that any domestic violence is bad and should be punished. But what that punishment is, it is a reflection of what the crime is. So that guy who gets the 2.5 years 5 years ago, if he wants to come back and fight it, I think the reason not to fight it is the dirty details of your case come out. And even if your crime was less than the crime that only got a year, that crime that only got a year has only so much information out. But for you to fight it, your information is going to come out. Every horrific detail of your case is going to come out. So if we look at Johnny Depp, right, as a case example, there's some evidence that, and some people you'll see it on the internet, fight that was a equally as abusive relationship. But we know so much about it that Johnny Depp, even if he was in an equally abusive relationship, we know so much that it's just disgusting. Johnny Depp's career is hurt, possibly unrepairable. So sometimes yes, there was something that involved me in keeping the gory details off the front page. You take your 2 years, you hope you can get a commercial contract, maybe be a coach somewhere. That's the reason why someone might not come back and fight it as things evolve, and understanding the ability to do research properly on these cases and give proper, more defined punishments evolves. It's hard to say. There is this is not an easy subject at all. And probably, it makes performance enhancing drug punishments look easy for these professional teams. It makes illegal drug problems look easy for these teams because it's just, those seem much more cut and dry and easier to meet out.
Oh, for sure. So you touched the I want to get into that debate because I have always debated about the PEDs when it comes to the Hall of Fame. It's an issue that I have always touched on. I have said in many occasions, yes, they did take PEDs. Some of the players took them for different reasons. But at the end of the day, the game is a game, and you have to have some level of skill. The drug isn't going to make you hit the ball better. Uh, and in the case of a Sammy Sosa or Mark McGuire or a Jose Canseco, uh, their their level of performance, these guys knew were hitting the ball the same way prior to the PEDs. And yeah, that it probably gave them a recovery from injury faster. I accept that, but to eliminate them from going into the fall based on the performance that they have done over a 15-year career doesn't have merit. And if you are going, some of the guys that are going into the hall right now don't have, didn't have to go through the type of strenuous seasons that these guys went through.
So I think I have a very controversial take on this because I'm not just anti-steroids. No, I want my professional athletes to be putting on the most amazing shows that they can put on. So 72 home runs. Well, let me take a step back. When I was growing up, they told us don't use steroids, they're a shortcut. No, they're not a shortcut, because if steroids were a shortcut, Bonds would have hit 61, 62 home runs. No, steroids take you to a place that you cannot get to without them. 72 home runs, 10 home runs more. That's not a shortcut. Now, we just arbitrarily draw the line at steroids because they're medicine. We don't say, well, sorry, you need Tommy John surgery. We're not going to intervene that way. No, we give you a new elbow and you can pitch another 5, 6, 7 years, getting more countable stats. In bike riding, yes, Lance Armstrong used performance-enhancing drugs. Every guy he beat on those performance-enhancing drugs also used performance-enhancing drugs. The bigger issue is kids, and just as a parent and a fan, that's the issue. How do you say to kids, you can't use PEDs in high school, you can't use PEDs in college, you're not getting paid, you can't do this to your body? So it's not about the on-the-field performance that I'm worried about steroids for, it's about the off-the-field performance for those 99.9% of us who want to be athletes in high school and are never going to be an athlete, and what they may do in those formative years to our bodies. So I agree. Like, what Barry Bonds did, he did. I mean, Barry Bonds is a very special case because he was a Hall of Famer before there was accusations. And then he became arguably the greatest hitter of all time. Roger Clemens was a Hall of Fame already. Then he became arguably the greatest pitcher of all time. I'd love to see these two in the Hall of Fame. The other thing is, for a man of my generation, I've said it on other shows, the Baseball Hall of Fame does not have the best hitter I've ever saw in terms of Barry Bonds, the best pitcher I ever saw in terms of Roger Clemens. Oh, and by the way, the guy with the most hits of all time, for a whole different reason. Like, the Hall of Fame itself should not be tied to this stuff. Like, you got banned from baseball, so what? Come into the Hall of Fame. It's not baseball, it's a museum. There's just, and which again, it's a separate argument, but the Hall of Fame, not including these guys, the writers should be embarrassed. And I know the younger writers apparently are all like, no, these guys go in. They competed against other steroid users. Again, it's not a shortcut, which is the other thing. It does take you to another level, but we can explain why Barry Bonds hit 72 home runs and still marvel at the fact that Barry Bonds hit 72 home runs.
So I'll bring a clear example, and I am going to go back to Seoul, Korea for this. Ben Johnson versus Carl Lewis. Ben Johnson finished with a 9.79. Carl Lewis finished with a 9.81. Now, Ben Johnson was made the scapegoat of the Olympic movement with regards to steroid use. Now, a guy doesn't finish 2/100 of a second behind another guy by doing it clean. And we know that it Canada was made a scapegoat country for this because it was a domination in the athletics of the US by the US Track and Field Association in those days. Now you have so many athletes at a high level that it's very hard to compete from every single country, whether it's Jamaica, whether it's the US, whether it's Canada. Canada had, and I feel sorry for Ben Johnson because Ben Johnson was made a scapegoat for something that was a common thing in those days, whether it was steroids or whether it was putting oxygen into your bloodstream so that you could perform at a higher level. But that is the same thing that's happening in baseball. They took what happened in the Olympics and they transponded to the national pastime in the US, which is baseball. And it's sad. It's really, really sad to see that athletes that compete, and I'll keep saying it. He'll keep saying it also with regards to Mr. Pete Rose, the only Cincinnati Red that is not in the hall, aside from the conception, which they don't want to bring him on because I don't know, because he burned his uniform. But Pete Rose, in the case of Pete Rose, they said, "Oh, he bet on the game." I haven't bet on the game. I will not do that because I don't believe in that. But there is not a player that can predict that he's going to hit a home run on a given day, even if he bet on himself. Uh, there's a lot of circumstances around that you cannot, even if you bet on yourself to do some outstanding feat, it's not going to happen. So we have to start looking and analyzing, and I go this to the selection committee, the Hall of Fame, all those wonderful sports writers that get the honor to vote for that hall, to start thinking about what's right for the game and not what's right for them.
I think I agree entirely. Now, Pete Rose is a slightly different issue. I do not disagree with him being banned from baseball for betting on the game. I just feel like just because you're banned from baseball, you shouldn't be banned from the Hall of Fame. You can go with the original guy who was banned for gambling with in the Black Sox scandal, and it doesn't matter. He still was a Hall of Famer what he did on the field. Now I know they have all these little ways and wording to keep out the folks that they don't want to put in, but it doesn't change the fact that Shoeless Joe Jackson was an amazing ball player. It doesn't change the fact that Pete Rose, when he was playing, was much, what we call much watch baseball. Like everyone wanted to see him hit 4,000 hits. So he deserves to be in the hall. But I can accept that if you bet on the sport, there's reasons to ban you, because yes, you may not know you're going to get a hit, but you might know when you're not going to get a hit. You might also decide I'm in a good zone, and other people haven't realized it yet. So there's enough to make it questionable for gambling on sports. But the writers and what you said, they have to do what's right by the Baseball Hall of Fame. I'm not the only one who's not going to the Hall of Fame because the guys I saw watch didn't get into the Hall of Fame. I can't be. I know I'm not that special of an individual. I'm not the only guy going, I'm not taking that trip to Cooperstown because the guys I saw play aren't. I'm not. And those writers are saying these guys can't get in because, and it's a mistake. Look, I'm not a fan of Kurt Schilling's off the field behavior, but he pitched that bloody sock game, and he was part of one of the most unbelievable situations in postseason baseball. Plus, he did it in Arizona. So look, the Hall deserves to have him in there. And there are some other undesirable people based on who they are and what they say that are in there. I feel like the halls should be based on what happens on the field, not what happens off the field. And in terms of Ben Johnson, yes, he was the fall guy. He was the guy who put steroids on the map for me. It's definitely a point of view I've changed over time. He certainly made steroids bad in America, because here was this guy who taking something away from America's hero, Carl Lewis, who, as you said, 0.202 seconds, you got to scratch your head. Ben Johnson the only one on it, or is he the only one that got caught? So yeah, all those things you say are right on point when it comes to steroids in the hall.
So, well, let's drift back into the current times. Big market news. Michael Franco was released by the Kansas City Royals. This is a kid that has great potential, and is bringing a lot of teams to the plate now to see who is going to acquire him now that he's in the free agent market. But my question with regards to what's happening now, and we have seen a lot of players that get released from their from camps, and they sit out technically the whole season because teams are not just willing to give them a chance, whether it's the minors or the majors.
Yeah, I think he's being hurt by Lindor. I mean, I think a lot of guys we're seeing now in sports where younger guys come in and they take off from the beginning and they never slow down. And lo and behold, they're the next whoever. We're also seeing, especially in baseball, where you can control your players' roster availability. So if they're young, we don't bring them up right away. We're going to get as many years as we can so that we can maximize the value. Once you become a free agent, if you haven't been there and done it consistently, people go, he's going to cost too much for a possible future star because we're not going to be patient anymore. Versus, let's get a guy who's also another possible future star, the guy who's currently 17th in Major League Baseball prospective, and pay him almost nothing. And that's the business of sports now, where you had your shot, you're now going to cost me too much money, even though the potential is still there. So unless you're willing to take a minor league contract, and once you have a taste of the majors, you don't want to go back to riding that bus. If you've played your cards right, you have the ability to say, I'll take a year off from playing and find a new job for myself. There's probably a TV studio available for you somewhere, or a booth. And it's not as much money, but it's not the dredge of minor league baseball, being in a bus and crappy hotels and things of that nature that make it worth it for you as a player to say, I'm not going to take that minor league contract. So again, I think this goes there. We've talked about analytics playing a part in who gets signed, the same team signing the same players, and then just the general sense of salary caps and value of a player. I can get the same high reward with a much lower risk because I can sign a guy who's still not even a major league tender yet for a few years and see if I can get that upside that way.
So one of the things that surprised me this year, it was just announced by Major League Baseball that they will hold the first Lou Gehrig Day across Major League Baseball. Now, Lou Gehrig, great player for the New York Yankees. June 2nd will become an official day across Major League ballparks from now on as Lou Gehrig Day to fight for the fight of ALS. And I'm trying to figure out, because why haven't they done it before? Lou Gehrig has been dead for a little while now. And everyone remembers Lou Gehrig. The disease is named for him. It's called Lou Gehrig's disease. And it took them, 30 years? Yeah?
How many? 50, 60, a long time.
Yeah. So why did it take so long? I mean, to honor a man that gave his his life to the game. And now they need new marketing schemes to get people into the ballpark. So that's why they are doing it. Or is it about the disease? It's about finding the cure. That's my issue with this.
So I am giving Major League Baseball the benefit of the doubt on this one because, like you said, he's been gone a long time. And I don't think Lou Gehrig is a great marketing tool, to be honest. He's just been gone for so long that there are a myriad of other folks who have come since Lou Gehrig who you could choose to give a day to um, that I think resonate more with the youth who they should be trying to get into the ballparks than Lou Gehrig does, right? And this is not a guy who's going to attract my kids. My kids are already not even children anymore. They've already made up their mind about baseball. But kids, even he's not that guy. So it feels like this is truly an opportunity to say the way we're going to get people in is we are going to do something about this disease. It had a moment a few years back with the water challenge, so it's not a disease that's completely unknown to people. And I think they're trying to do a good thing. Yes, there's definitely marketing involved in that, but choosing Lou Gehrig, I think what is a good thing we can do? Well, baseball's tied to Lou Gehrig's disease, so let's give him a day. Um, that is my feeling about it. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're trying to do a good thing, and this is a good thing that you can easily tie to baseball. Who should baseball be helping out first? How about those who have the disease named after one of our greats, Lou Gehrig?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things. I mean, and let's remember that uh, one of the biggest supporters of ALS right now is Big Daddy, Big Papi.
Yes.
And, there is not a bigger. I don't think there is a bigger supporter than that. And it, I think that they should put him as the face of that campaign, so that it brings it forthcoming to try to get awareness out there. Uh, you need a good ambassador for not just for Lou Gehrig himself, but for the disease. And I think Big Papi would be that guy to bring that image to the game.
I agree with you. Very charismatic guy. And if he's willing to do that work, and that's a thing he already cares about, yes, I think that you're right on. He is a great spokesman to bring out and roll out because everybody knows who he is, and he will attract younger folks into the game. Um, and then the next thing to do is you got to tie all your Major League Baseball games that come out for your video consoles, whether it's Y2K baseball or the show. You got to make sure that those consoles include Lou Gehrig's disease day during the season in the games, just to keep the awareness and make the youth more aware of it entirely. Because in terms of marketing, which I think we both agree there is some marketing aspect to this, you have to make sure you tie it into the 10 to 15-year-olds. This is the time to get them into your sport, into your game. This is when they're going to try the sport out and maybe not like it and find out they can't hit a ball, they can't catch a ball. But how do you keep them interested in watching that game?
So I'm just going to touch on one more story in baseball because I do want to go to the NFL, which is your expertise. Uh, I'm going to touch on going back to Boston, the loss of the Boston Red Sox of Jackie Bradley Jr., who signs a $24 million contract with the Milwaukee Brewers, and it's amazing to see that Boston has technically disintegrated uh, ever since their former GM and president resigned. Uh, Dombrowski was an amazing man, and I have to say it. He wasn't responsible for the downfall of the Boston Red Sox. It wasn't his problem. What happened with Cora? It wasn't. These things happened, and it just rebounded, and they took it out on him because the team lost their first 15 games of the season. Uh, the GM doesn't play the game. The GM puts together a team that he has influence on the team. Yes, he does. But Jackie Bradley Jr. was one of his successes, and now you see him somewhere else. And this was a kid. This was a kid that was doing amazing things with that team.
It is, I agree with you. When did the Boston Red Sox become the Miami Marlins? I mean, they're just to make somebody great, ship them off. What is this? This is unreal. What's happened to them? Um, they finally break the curse, get a few good years of just utter dominance, and now they're playing small market ball. And when you see a team do this, as a former Met fan, a team in the market that used to compete money wise, not as far, sorry, as a Met fan, but you saw it with Wilpon. He started just we're not going to do the big money deals. We're going to let guys no. You wonder if it's time for new ownership, because that just, you can blame the GM, you can blame but when a team is falling apart and it seems like it's about money and it's not throwing the money at the players. It's one thing if you're a team that doesn't have a history of doing that, but if you're a team that does, what's going on in that owner's wallet that now he needs to tighten his belt on his toy? I mean, look, owning a baseball, any sports team, at least in my own imagination, if I had that kind of money, it's a toy and a hobby. And sometimes toys and hobbies cost you money, and sometimes a hobby turns into a little money maker. And years are up and down. And I feel like if I had a team, I grew up watching George Steinbrenner, and I'll make as little as possible and just get me the best players out there. That's not going on in Boston anymore. So I'm not up to date on every Boston story and Boston ownership news story, but that's where my mind goes.
Yeah, for sure. So let's drift into the game of the National Football League, because there is a bunch of stories coming out. One of them being in regards to the Buffalo Bills. Uh, Story came out of uh, USA Today this morning, saying that the Bills are the worst free agent signing team last season. Now, are they the worst free, signing, free agent signing team, or did they have the players that they needed that they didn't know they didn't need to go to sign free agents? You have to analyze it from both sides. Was the team strong enough from the previous season that they didn't have to go to sign free agents to bring a championship? They, as far as I'm concerned, they added a couple of players that made it, and they made it far. They were the story of the NFL for 13 weeks out of this past season. So where is the downfall here? I don't I don't see it.
I'm with you. It is very uncommon for what happened in Tampa Bay to happen in the NFL. It's where you get a bunch of free agents and it works. Um, Several years ago, the Eagles did. They were the dream team, and their dream was a nightmare. We see it in Washington year in and year out that they get all the big names and they win the offseason, and it's nothing. The Bills made the best trade of the offseason last year. That both teams won that trade unbelievably, Minnesota and Buffalo. That's the offseason GM talk you need to be having about 2020. They got themselves a wide receiver in Diggs who paired perfectly with the quarterback they had. It brought in all the other, it allowed Beasley to perform as well. The team was great because of offseason moves. So not signing free agents or signing the wrong free agents didn't affect them. Tampa Bay was an outlier. getting Brady, getting Gronk, getting Brown, bringing in Fournette on a trade. Building a team like that it's not usually what you think it's going to be. So being the worst in the free agent market isn't a big deal. Like, they lost. When did they lose it again? In the AFC Championship game? I think whatever they did in the offseason last year worked. That's the bottom line. It worked. So whether it's the worst free agency or not, it worked.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see they this season they might have to go to the free agent market because they are losing a bunch of players on their own squad. So they might have to go to that free agent market. But last season, they proved to be the team to beat in the AFC. Uh, you know, no one expected Tampa to do what they did. Uh, Everyone said, "Oh, Tampa is going to end up 8-9 or something like that, and get into the playoffs," but they weren't going to succeed. And everyone was saying it's Buffalo's year to lose. And so why are they talking the stories now about what happened last season when it doesn't make sense? If they don't do anything this season, I understand it, and then you can say whatever you want to say. But last season they were outstanding. They were a great team.
Absolutely.
Um, Another story coming out of the NFL is with regards to J.J. Watt, in regards to his salary. Was it worth it? Was it not worth it? You know, to me, what the Cardinals did with J.J. Watt, uh, it was just business. You cannot say your expectations of him were higher, yes, but they are just expectations. It's not the reality of the game. Anything can happen during a season in any sport. And if the player performs well, you are you wouldn't be having the stories like this. If he happened to have an off season, yes, it might look overpayment, but you know what he's going to do this season coming up that might rebound, and then they will say, oh, that was a great acquisition.
I look at JJ Watt and I look over at JPP. And JPP is a year older than JJ Watt. He had some great years. He got hurt. He struggled. And then he was one of the key folks in the Super Bowl. Um, it's hard to forecast defense from game to game, let alone season to season. But if Arizona has a defense that works out for them, and J.J. Watt is a main piece of that, I have faith in their offense, and they're going to compete in a very tough division. So I think it was a good deal all around. It's a 2-year deal. He'll be gone before you know it. In the second year of that deal, we expect a huge spike in the free agent in the salary cap. So I like the deal. Other than everybody thought he was going to Cleveland, and it was a great deal.
Um, so we have another 2 minutes to go. Let's talk about the free agents coming up that could impact the teams and the league. Uh, first, uh, first would be for the Colts. We are talking about Carson Wentz. In my opinion, Carson Wentz is not the right man for that offensive attack. Uh, and to have someone of his caliber sit on the bench, on the sidelines, is a dishonor to what he has done and the work he has done all around in the league.
But look, I never been a big Carson Wentz believer. The only time he shined, Reich was his quarterback's coach. But I think he's a word I like to use on the Scott's show. I think he's franchised. He came in, he got a strong performance for a year or two, and they figured him out. And I mean, in his case, it's a lot of injuries. He's been physically beaten up, and some of the reporting that's come out on him in the locker room has been really negative, but there's been some sort of correcting on that. He's just not a super outgoing fella, which makes it tough, especially if you're about to go to a new team. So I'm not sure how that deal is going to work out for them. They gave up nothing to try. He is expensive. They have a lot around him. Is he physically worse than oh my goodness, the guy who just retired, Phillips? It's just, hey, he is what he is, and they're going to get a backup or two for him. And yeah, that guy might compete for the job and put all that money on the bench. But on the other hand, there's always hope that the Carson Wentz we saw 2019 is going to be the Carson Wentz that we get to see in the future. And then you're a Super Bowl contender. You are competing with Kansas City.
Well, I have to thank you, Obi, for being on the show. Can you please tell everyone how they can reach you on social media?
Absolutely. It's Me, My Scotch, and I. It's on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We are on TikTok, and we now have our YouTube page up and coming. Again, it's Me, My Scotch, and I. And you will find us on all those platforms, and we'll share with you our great ideas and wonderful thoughts and invite you to respond back to us.
So your guest again for this coming Friday?
Former NFL football player Dave Fiore, current restaurateur Dave Fiore. Should be a perfect fit to talk sports and whiskey.
Awesome. So for Obi Spencer, my name is Eduardo Harari for Spanglish Sports World Live English Edition. And I remind you to please that this show can be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network in social media as well. Remember that to go to our website, SpanglishSportsWorld.com, for all the news. There we have amazing writers that really put the pen to hold. And remember, Spanglish Sports World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, but especially live it, because Spanglish Sports World is sport, and sport is Spanglish Sports World. For Obi Spencer, my name is Eduardo Harari. Please stay home. Please stay safe during these pandemic times of COVID-19. Until next week, I bid you farewell and have a great